Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast, coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name's Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski, and we've just been talking. We've all got cup final fever on FA Cup final weekend. City in the cup final for the third year in a row, but not against Manchester United this year, which felt like it was going to become a tradition. It's Crystal Palace instead, and I think it's going to be quite a good game. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't feel like anyone's talking about the cup final. I don't know why that is, Si.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to talk about 16th versus say, is that allowed and should they get a Champions League place? And it kind of sort of in two minds about it because I sort of think like, well, the Europa League's been slagged off for ages, so the time to make it good is like offer a Champions League place, and then people will put more effort into it, and lo and behold, that's happened. But at the same time, you sort of think, well, maybe rather than like a top five in the Premier League, maybe you offer the FA Cup a Champions League place, and that encourages people to make more of that. And Crystal Palace have played strong teams throughout the competition, and have been rewarded with the third final in their club's history. And the sun will be shining. We'll have two entertaining teams on show. I think we're in for a really good day.
Well, if the recent home game for City is anything to go by, then it's going to be two teams really having a go at each other. But I mean, Palace did the same at Selhurst Park to City. There've been two, maybe not for City fans for the full sort of 180 minutes of those two games, but it's been two good games for the neutral. And City have their weaknesses, as we've discussed all season. Palace have a lot of threat up front, and will give it a go. I think it could be quite an entertaining end-to-end game if the teams allow. And I think it's a little bit refreshing not to have a Manchester derby, because I think fans might be able to go down and enjoy the pre-match as well, as much as anything else, because you don't want to lose those derbies in a final. I mean, obviously they don't want to lose against Crystal Palace, but I think it might be just pressure's off, no trebles on the line. This is the chance for a bit of silverware this season. Can they sort of make a positive from a disappointing season? We've heard obviously Erling Haaland this week reiterate that it's been a horrible season, and a sort of coming out with different superlatives for it. I'm sure when we listen to Pep later, he will insist that it won't be a good season if they win the trophy, but it will make it a hell of a lot better if they can win that cup, because if they don't, they have gone without a season without a trophy. If they can win the FA Cup, they can at least say, look, we've at our worst, we've still come out with a cup that a lot of clubs would snap your hand off for.
Yeah, I don't know if it matters. I don't know if they need to win it. Like it would be good for them to say, yeah, we've won an FA Cup in our worst ever season. How good are we? But I think the general sort of trajectory and feel is that they are back on the right path anyway, and so a trophy doesn't necessarily matter. I don't think whether they beat Crystal Palace or not is going to define what they do next season. And I think the fact that they are playing Palace rather than United or rather than Arsenal or Liverpool or anyone like that makes it a bit easier for the fans, because the fans would love to win a trophy. The fans would love to go down to Wembley and celebrate another win. And say, look how good we are even in our worst season. But also, I think the City fans will be very, very happy for Crystal Palace fans if Palace win the cup for the first time ever in their history. And I think if City had been playing United and it was like, well, if we lose, then United win, or things like that. Imagine if United could win the FA Cup and Europa League after finishing 16th, 17th, it would be like wild. So, like, as much as the players want to win, as much as the fans would love to win, I think the fact that it's Palace and they're a likable team and it would be a good story if they won means that, and that it doesn't matter too much to City in the long term if they win or lose. Kind of takes the pressure off this final a bit and means that they can go into it kind of enjoying it and looking forward to it and wanting to win, but knowing that if the worst comes to the worst on the pitch, it's not anywhere near the most terrible situation it could be, or the worst bit of their season.
Yeah, it's tricky. I take that point, and I think if Palace win, I think there will be sort of gracious sort of reactions from the City fans. I think the City fans get tarred with a sort of a pretty lazy brush, but I think they are sort of gracious in defeat in stuff like that. But I do think it does matter for City in terms of keeping that sort of winning mentality going. And even at the start of Pep's reign, when they were focusing a lot on the Carabao Cup, when other teams might not have been, even in the FA Cup final against Watford, they went all out because they knew it was a big cup to win. I think if they go into it thinking it doesn't matter, you put yourself at risk of not winning the final, but also it sends the message in the future. I think just listening to these Haaland comments and other players in sort of the senior sort of leadership group and that sort of thing, they really want to win and that they've been really hurt this season. So it's not what they wanted. They wanted to be challenging for the Premier League and the Champions League. This is sort of third choice trophy if they were sort of selected at the start of the season. But I I think any trophy they can get to win keeps up that sort of silverware coming in every single season, keeps up that hunger. I I think it would help them a lot going into next season. It's not like you say, it's not going to change transfer plans. It's not going to sort of change how anyone is viewed in sort of their legacy. But I do think just generally that keeping that mentality going, I think is important. So I understand why they're saying it doesn't make it a successful season, but I still think it matters to win that. So it is a tricky one. It feels like a different kind of final. I think just because it's not at the end of the season, they've still got Champions League qualification to get. It just feels a little bit under the radar, a bit underwhelming.
That and the thing is, it wouldn't make it a successful season, but it would represent a major success. Like it is the FA Cup. It's one of the big trophies that you want to win at the start of every season. And the players are feeling like they want to win it even more because of the difficulties that they had and because of the sort of the criticism that they faced this season. They faced more criticism this season than probably in the last 3 or 4 combined. And it's been tough. I spoke to Ruben Diaz ahead of the game, and there's a piece on the website on Friday and in the paper on Saturday, and it's they're hurt. They're really hurt by the fact that people have not just sort of said they've had a bad season, but written them off. Said, this team is done and needs to a load of. We've started having this narrative, haven't we? That City spent 180 million in January, so no wonder they've improved. You're like, yeah, well, Marmoush has played because Haaland's been injured. Gonzalez, not so much. I think it's 4 starts in the last 10. Kusanov hasn't started any of the last 8. Rice hasn't started any of the last 10. So it's like it's not been the January signings that have done it. It's Pep going back to Bernardo Silva and Ilkay Gundogan and Mateo Kovacic, and keeping faith with like Mateus Nunes, that has brought this turnaround. I think the injection of youth in sort of Nico O'Reilly and also James McAtee has helped. But this is a squad that's very much alive, and as well, like Oscar Bob is back in training, Rodri back in training, Ake back in training. We'll see on kind of their availability for the whole thing. But I mentioned to Diaz, people being back in training. He said it's a lovely sight having everyone available, and when everyone is available, the conversation changes a lot, and we get very dangerous. Like if that is the mood that is starting to be felt across the City squad, then I think they can take confidence into the cup final. They can take confidence into the Club World Cup, and they can feel like they are strong again when for most of this season they haven't felt that at all.
Yeah, that he speaks in riddles, doesn't he, Diaz? But you can tell when he's annoyed and he's got
It,
something
it,
that
it, it-
he wants to say.
it's not riddles, is it? It's like parables or like I don't know what the phrase is, but it's sort of he's got his own ways of he's got his own idioms, I suppose.
Yeah, you've got to sort of like decipher what he's saying, but it's also pretty clear at the same time. And he's one of those who, yeah, like you say, really doesn't like the criticism. I remember, was it Bournemouth where Bernardo challenged our colleague Tyrone to name the players who are too old, and now, as you say, those players are the ones who've sort of got City through at the end of the season. So it's I wouldn't. This is another reason why I think that winning the cup is important, because they can get that confidence back and prove people wrong a little bit. Then they can go into the last couple of games of the season. If they can go and do something positive at the Club World Cup, that's essentially pre-season, but they can just continue that momentum a little bit into next season, where I'm sure we will, if they do go on a good run and go back to challenging for the title, I'm sure there will be a lot of comments from people like Diaz about, you wrote us off last season, but look at the danger of doing that. I think the way that Pep sets up in the final is going to be interesting. I've just, as we're recording, I've got a notification from City of the player of the season shortlist, and each of those can sort of guide us a little bit into who starts in the cup final. Now, I'm a little bit surprised to see Kevin De Bruyne's name in that
Ah,
player of the season top
surely
three.
not. Surely
It's
not.
Haaland, Gvardiol, and De Bruyne. I think the top two have pretty clear arguments, and we can talk about whether they start or where they start in the cup final. And I think it's fairly nailed on that they will start. But De Bruyne, he's not been given a contract because he's probably not reached the same levels. He's been better since not being given a contract, but that feels a mix of not many players being too good this season, and also the sentiment, and maybe just giving him one final vote to win before he leaves.
I don't think there's been a player I've enjoyed watching more in the Premier League than Kevin De Bruyne. So, you know, it's not meant to be disrespectful, but he's not been one of City's best players this season. He missed 3 months with injury and really not played that often. So, yeah, it does feel like a an interesting inclusion from City. It's Guardiola, isn't it? Guardiola's been the best player. He has not been without mistakes. He's made quite a few, but he's been the most consistent, and um, he's just been the best by far, I think.
In two positions as well, so sort of left back and centre back. That's probably going to be one of the main dilemmas for Pep. He sort of moved Gvardiol back out left and put Akanji in the middle at Southampton. That feels like a bit of a more solid defence. Palace in the home game really targeted Nico O'Reilly, but then he goes and scores at the other end. It's sort of a win-win situation. You've got good positives with both, but do you start Gvardiol or O'Reilly at left back, and I suppose the centre backs fall into place as a result of that decision?
One of, I think, the more active and intelligent kind of coaches that City will be going up against. Glasner has done really well for Palace and like just outthought. They're in the semi-final really. And I outthought City in both games this season. Really, Palace should have been out of it in the game at the Etihad if it wasn't for sort of poor finishing. And City won that game 5-2, and they played this like 4-2-2-2 that they've kind of settled on in recent weeks. And Glasner said to Pep afterwards, like, don't try that next time we play because we'll have found a solution to it. O'Reilly was targeted in the Palace game, and yeah, Palace should have scored more against him. But then by the end, he's come up with a goal. I think he got an assist as well, and it was it was really weird the last game at Southampton for sort of the centre back pairing. So there was a bit of that, but you also wonder whether sort of O'Reilly stops being such an unknown quantity, and teams have stopped going, yeah, let's just pick on him because he's a new fella, and actually look at his strengths and weaknesses, and maybe there's a bit of that involved. Maybe it's kind of a seniority thing. I think O'Reilly deserves to play the game. I think if you're saying, oh, Stefan Ortega's the cup goalkeeper, well, like City wouldn't be in the final if it wasn't for O'Reilly. Like he did well against Salford, against Plymouth, and Bournemouth. He won the game. So that's probably the most important game in City's season, especially if they go on to have a good game next season. So I think O'Reilly deserves to start the final. But it's just whether Pep thinks that way, I suppose.
I suppose you could do O'Reilly left back, Gvardiol in the middle with Diaz and Akanji at right back. It might be a risk as Palace play with the wingers, but I mean, you've got Rico Lewis who did well in the last round. Nunes might be your sort of physical right back against that kind of team. It's for the first time in a while. There's actually some positive decisions to make in that. I do think he might go for Gvardiol at left back just to go for a bit of solidity, and it is very harsh on O'Reilly for all of those reasons you say, but it doesn't make his season any less impressive. And he's he is someone who, like at Bournemouth, can come off the bench and change it if needed. But I mean, he started 2 games at Wembley already. He wouldn't be phased by that. I just think it's a final, and you don't win finals on sentiment really. And I think there are equal arguments that O'Reilly deserves it on merit, but I wonder if he's gone back to his trusted old midfield uh, faces and names, if he does the same in defence with Diaz and Akanji in the middle and Gvardiol on the left. And I suppose Gvardiol's got a little bit of making up to do after the cup final last year with his mix up with Ortega. I remember speaking to him in New York on pre-season just after he'd come back, and you could tell he was still annoyed. And Ortega, when I spoke to him, he was saying, "Oh well, it happens. It's miscommunication. Let's move on." Gvardiol really didn't want to talk about it, and you can imagine he wants to make it up. A player of the season contender has done that himself, but it's in the cup final. He's probably got some of those memories flooding back. In terms of midfield, it could be anyone, but I suppose the main decision is: do you give Kevin De Bruyne a last sort of big game to make an impact before he goes?
I think you do. Again, just because it's not like City going for the treble or something like that. It is an important game. I think this is an important game that you can win with De Bruyne in. I don't think there are players that are sort of in good enough form to warrant the storm that it would be if De Bruyne didn't start the final. I think you only have to kind of listen. Like every player has been asked about De Bruyne, and they've all said, "Yeah, it gives us extra motivation. We want to win it for Kevin." Like, I think they want Kevin to be leading them out and lifting the trophy. I don't think it would go down well in the squad if De Bruyne didn't start. And like I said, I don't think anyone is in the kind of form that merits keeping him out. Like De Bruyne is not playing amazingly, but is Phil Foden? No. Is like McAtee doing enough? No. Is Marmoush even? I don't think you could argue even that. So like I probably have De Bruyne and Marmoush starting behind Haaland. But I just kind of think it's not worth not starting De Bruyne because it would go against kind of what the fans want, what the players want. Like the fans have got this massive tifo planned for him, and like it would just be a bit sad, I think.
Yeah, if we're talking about neutrals watching a good game, neutrals want to see Kevin De Bruyne on the big stage one last time, and I think I'd not necessarily considered the sort of impact within the squad, but I mean, there have been some interesting comments about the squad feeling that he could have stayed and given a bit more as well. So I still think he's playing with a point to prove, and this feels like it can be a real game where he wants to just make a final impact. And then they've got the Bournemouth farewell at the Etihad on Tuesday as well. It obviously impacts who else plays and who you play in midfield. Do you play Gundogan again? And obviously there's memories of him in the cup final 2 years ago. The narrow system didn't work against Southampton, but by full time, Pep just threw all the attackers on, and it was sort of wave after wave of attack. But he went wide as well, so I can see maybe Doku playing and potentially like Marmoush on the flank rather than behind Haaland to offer that width, but also come inside and you've got the whoever you play at fullback as well. I think that might be the way he goes, and De Bruyne can fit that as well, doing those runs up behind Haaland, and you've got to incorporate Haaland, I think, better than they did against Southampton. I don't think they will take Haaland out of the squad, out of the team. I think there's the argument of, does the system work without him better? But you're playing Haaland in a final, you've got to do it. Although I was looking at his statistics in the build up to this. He's played 5 games at Wembley now for City, not scored in any of them. He's played in 7 finals for City, not scored in any of them. The finals, by their nature, are more tight, they're more sort of tense and compact, and a lot of those games are playing, United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and I mean Inter Milan and players and teams like that. It it's not going to be a game where he gets loads and loads of chances, but he would love to sort of put that record right, because it sticks out like a sore thumb when you look at all the grounds he scored at, and he scores against almost every team he plays against, and if he doesn't, he only needs 1 or 2 games to do it. To go 5 games at Wembley without scoring feels like it doesn't feel like right. I had to look at 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, no, this is the truth. It's not, my eyes are not deceiving me.
It's actually even worse than that. It's one of my favourite Erling Haaland stats. He's never scored at a neutral venue for City. So you're talking like obviously the Champions League final in Istanbul, but the Super Cup in Seville, the Community Shield when it was held at Leicester was obviously his debut when he missed that sitter. So his scoring record is phenomenal home and away, but neutral, never. Even like FA. Yeah, obviously that's the thing. Like you can say, oh, maybe finals are tight or things like that, but it just defies defies any logic, because like there's no reason why, like he played in the semi-final against Sheffield United in the treble year, I think, and had one that nearly went in, but yeah, it's just one of those things. He's a phenomenon, and that is a phenomenally weird stat about him. I I can't see it lasting, but it's going to be huge fun until it does last. Imagine if it follows him through his career. He's just like, he can never cope with a neutral venue. So yeah, quite fun. But the Southampton game has obviously kind of opened up. Does Haaland start? Should Haaland start? All this. There's like quite a big debate going on in Norway about it already, I think. But it's like you just start him because of what he brings you, albeit maybe not at Wembley. But it will happen sooner or later.
I think it's a very sort of reasonable debate, a reasonable question to ask, and there are arguments for not playing him, but the arguments for playing him completely outweigh them. And like you say, it would be an intense backlash if De Bruyne doesn't start. Imagine if he doesn't start Haaland on the back of one game at Southampton where nothing clicked for anyone.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. I mean, Pep firmly put Southampton on the creative players didn't do enough, and I don't think anyone could argue with that. There was plenty who were saying Haaland could have done more as well, and I think that's valid. And I don't think it didn't look sharp, but then I think it's difficult to look sharp in those circumstances, and no one is going to play like Southampton played. And you've got like, if you're talking about Crystal Palace, well, they are one of the teams who have attacked City. I think I saw something saying they've been at least a goal up after 8 minutes of each of the last 3 meetings against City. So like they've really gone for it, and they've been rewarded with it. So there's going to be more space. There's going to be space for City to attack and for Haaland to get into. And one of my favourite Haaland performances was his first season when he came off the bench and scored that hat-trick to win. I think they were 2-0 down and they won 4-2. And obviously it's a different Palace team now, but Haaland has that about him. I don't know if it was Gay who he just sort of like manhandled for 30 yards and then stuck it in the back of the net. But yeah, he will score goals, and I accept that there's always going to be an argument about, are they a better team without Haaland? Are they what? But you look at what they've won with him and how they struggled without him this season. And also kind of, Marmoush has filled in well and led the line well in his absence, but he's a really different kind of striker. And he's not scored too many goals. I think I was looking the other day, and he's not kind of got more goals and assists in Haaland's absence than Nico O'Reilly has. He's not
He's still
scored, in
only got,
fact.
is it one away from the Etihad as well?
Yeah. In the FA Cup at Bournemouth, he's not scored in any of his last 5 games. That's 4 starts, and then the Southampton game when he came off the bench and hit the bar. But yeah, he's not scored since the 5-2 win over Palace. So although kind of he's been doing a good job in the team and the team have been playing well, they have had to rely on other players for goals.
Yeah, which again brings you back to surely you start Haaland. That Palace game that you mentioned, that was sort of when he was just starting and scoring. He couldn't stop scoring, but it was the inevitability of those goals, but also it was that might have been the game or around the time where you could see the fans just realize we have got a superstar here. Like we've never had a player like this who just scores not just one and important goals, but 3 at a time. It's like back to back to back hat tricks, I think, at the Etihad maybe, and it's I suppose his record in finals is something to note, but I might well be putting words in his mouth. I'm fairly sure he said he doesn't mind if he doesn't score in finals as long as the team wins. And he is that sort of player. If he drags the 2 Palace centre backs out of position and opens up space for De Bruyne or Doku or whoever is playing or Marmoush in that system, he'll be quite happy as long as he's got his hands on a trophy. I think that shows what he's about, and it feels like the game against Southampton when there's sort of 2 low blocks completely surrounding him. All the focus is on how many touches has he had, what's he doing. It's because he can't move for opposition shirts, and I don't think Palace is going to be that kind of game. I could be wrong, but the way that they've played against City is they know that they can score goals against this City side, and I think they will. I think they'll fancy the chances of upsetting City in this final. So uh, if they can keep Haaland quiet and get a couple of goals at the other end, I think they will think they've got quite a good chance. And it's normally I would at this point ask you for a prediction, but I'm not really sure what mine would be in terms of how the game is going to go. I wonder if there might be extra time, which wouldn't help us getting back or the City fans getting back. But it feels like there isn't going to be a lot between the sides.
No, I mean there might be in terms of City might run out winners like they did in the April game, but I think it's going to be entertaining. I think Palace are going to be um, up for it and score at least 1 goal, and it'll be up to City to try and match them for it. But like obviously the 5-2 was very entertaining. The 2-2 back at Selhurst Park this season was very entertaining as well. So if we can have anything like those 2 games, I think we're in for a treat. I'm looking forward to it. I'm, you know, not always thrilled about going down to Wembley, but I think this is going to be really one to look forward to. And I think because of the circumstances of the game, I think it's going to be a great day for Palace fans, for City fans. I think everyone's just going to have a good time.
It's a different sort of anticipation, isn't it, from the 2 Manchester derbies? There was a treble on the line on one, and then it was obviously you're not going to turn down a second Manchester derby, but yeah, this one feels like we've spoken about. Is it underwhelming? I think we've got to look at it as a positive. If you're expecting goals, I'm going to go 0-0 and a penalty shootout because that's the sort of luck that we've been having with City this season, and especially my predictions. When I predict one way, it goes the other. So I'll go for a tight affair where they cancel each other out. A word for the City fans as well. Sold out 33,000 tickets at Wembley at increased prices, which shows that there is still that demand for those big games. I think the criteria went quite open, so hopefully it means that anyone who wants a ticket has been able to get one, and maybe some fans who haven't been to a final before can go and see that, and that's obviously important. I remember speaking to a couple of the fans outside the semi final, and as much as City, this is a sort of 30th, 31st visit to Wembley. there was a couple who were like, "This is my first one. This is like, it's still got that excitement and that sort of aura about it. A trip to Wembley and an FA Cup final. Hopefully, it will reward those City fans who've put their hands in the pocket and have got down. And fingers crossed, they can get back in time to watch a bit of Eurovision as well. So yeah, Si will be down there at Wembley tomorrow. We'll be back next week, I believe, to react to the cup final and look ahead to Bournemouth. I'm not sure we've decided what our schedule is for the podcast, but we will be back to look ahead to Kevin De Bruyne's farewell and what will turn out to be a big week in the Champions League race, as well as Premier League football, of course, over the weekend. We're off to speak to Pep, so you can find all of that on the Manchester Evening News. That interview with Ruben Dias will be up on Friday and on Saturday, you say. So yeah, lots of FA Cup final content to look forward to. Drop us a like and a subscribe. Leave us a comment if you can, and we will be back next week, where hopefully City will be FA Cup final champions.